Hi everybody, it's Terry Ryder from Hotspotting, and tonight on Hotspot of the Week I'm going to feature the latest edition of our most popular product, which is called the National Top 10 Best Buys Report. And we've just published today the latest edition of that report. And tonight, I'm going to feature one of the 10 locations that's included in that report to give you an example of the sorts of locations that are in the report and why we feature them. The location I want to feature is the Port Adelaide area of the South Australian capital. And why is this an important location and why is it included in this report? Well, firstly, Adelaide's a very important city in the overall scheme of things in the housing market of Australia right now. We all know that the previous booms that were happening in the two biggest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, are no longer happening, and prices have been winding backwards in many of the parts of those two major markets. But there's a lot more to Australia than just Sydney and Melbourne, and right across the country there are locations that have strong markets that have rising activity, and prices are rising at rates well above average. Adelaide is one of those places. Now, it's not showing up in the media because the media publishes generalised data on prices, one figure to describe an entire city, and most of the data published for Adelaide says that Adelaide prices are only rising 1 or 2% in annual terms. But those generalised figures don't tell the full story. We've recently conducted a suburb by suburb analysis of the Adelaide market, and what we found was not only are there a number of precincts where sales activity is rising, likely to lead to future price growth, but we already have prices rising in the vast majority of suburbs across Adelaide. Our suburb by suburb analysis shows that 74% of Adelaide suburbs have median house prices higher than a year ago. In other words, 3/4 of the suburbs of Adelaide have rising prices, and in many cases they're rising quite strongly. The generalised figure doesn't tell the whole story. Now, one of those places is the city of Port Adelaide Enfield, up in the, as you might imagine, the Port Adelaide area of the South Australian capital. It's a very attractive market. It's very affordable. It's got some major growth drivers happening up there. It's got very low vacancies, good rental yields, and it's one of the busiest markets, not only in Adelaide, but anywhere in capital city Australia right now. The big things that are happening there, firstly, that's where the Defence Force contracts to build vessels for the Navy are happening. $89 billion worth of construction to happen over the next 10, 15 or 20 years, however long it takes. It's underway. Right now they're spending over $500 million upgrading the Osborne naval shipyard so they can build those vessels. It's a massive economic injection for the city of Adelaide, and specifically for the Port Adelaide area. There's other things happening there to drive demand for real estate up in that part of Adelaide, including the relocation of 500 public servants from central Adelaide up to that precinct, to a new office building, government office precinct happening there, and that's going to bring also a lot of new demand into that particular precinct of Adelaide. It's a very attractive market from the viewpoint of affordability. Most of the suburbs in the Port Adelaide Enfield local government area have median house prices in the 300,000s or 400,000. The vast majority of them do. There's a few that are higher than that, like Semaphore Park and Clemzig and Broadview, but most of them are somewhere in the 400,000s. And there's some pretty good price growth happening there already. For example, Broadview, its median price for houses has grown 15% in the last 12 months. There's a few others with solid growth, not quite as high as that. Green Acres and Gillies Plains are both up 6%. So is Semaphore Park. It's also up 6% in the last 12 months. So it's an area that's starting to deliver solid price growth in response to rising buyer demand. It's one of those places that shows up in our quarterly surveys of sales activity. This is the leading precinct in Adelaide in terms of the number of suburbs where buyer demand is growing quarter by quarter, and that's likely to lead to price growth. Very low vacancies there. Every single postcode, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, almost a dozen postcodes right across that local government area in that part of Adelaide and every single one of them has a vacancy rate below 2%. Most of them are in fact below 1.5%. So very tight rental market, and as a consequence of that, the rental yields are pretty good. A number of suburbs have median rental yields of somewhere between 4.5% and 5.5%. So it's attractive for investors, particularly from the bigger cities, from a number of viewpoints. Great value for money, very affordable. Growth is happening. The rental yields are very good. The vacancies are low, which would tend to keep those rental yields strong. And there's plenty of demand coming into that market. I mentioned the contracts to create submarines and frigates for the Australian Navy. The submarine program is $50 billion. The frigate fleet program is $35 billion. And in preparation for that, they're currently spending over $500 million expanding and upgrading the Osborne naval shipyard to accommodate that. There's lots of other things happening up there. The waterfront areas around Port Adelaide are a work in progress. They've been evolving and kind of gentrifying over a number of years, and that's still going on. There's a big project, a residential project called Dock One. That's a $350 million development. There's another one called the Fletcher Slip Master Plan, another residential project up to $160 million, and there are a few others as well. So it's an area with a high level of activity, lots of development, demand drivers such as the relocation of 500 public servants up to that area. The naval construction program is going to be huge for that area and for Adelaide generally. And it's a market to watch. It figures very prominently in our new edition of the Top 10 Best Buyers report. We rate it probably the most compelling market in Adelaide, and we rate Adelaide as the most underrated capital city property market in Australia. So there are 9 other locations highlighted. 5 of them are capital city locations from the smaller capital cities, and the other 5 are from regional areas, reflecting the fact that most of the growth that's currently happening in property markets around Australia right now is happening in the regional markets or in the smaller capital cities. So Brisbane features, Perth features, Adelaide features, Canberra features, and also some of our more active regional markets, including those in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. So a broad cross-section of the national market featuring in this new edition of our National Top 10's Best Buy. It's our most popular product always, and for good reason, because it's the one that tells you what we think are the 10 best places to buy real estate as investors looking forward, taking a long-term view, looking for affordable buying, good rental yields and future capital growth. So make sure you get yourself a copy. That's it for now. Hotspot of the week for this week. Let's do it again same time next week. Bye for now.